Well, hello plant lovers, it is Matthew in Melbourne. Thank you for finding me here on YouTube in this crowded world of orchid care video channels. Mine is all about me trying to grow cold, cool, intermediate orchids in Melbourne, Australia, without any help from green lights or humidifiers or greenhouses, much as I wish I had one. Just me and them, inside or outside or not at all. So those are my no-nonsense conditions, plant lovers. So if that sounds like it could be of use to you, hit subscribe. I do post every week on a Friday. Very amateur ramblings. I kill a lot. Many things end up on the compost heap, but some things do succeed. And that might help you in your orchid journey. And our orchid journey today is this beast. Look at that. Look at the size of that pot. Yes, today is going to be a repotting video. It's an Oncidium repotting video, to be particular. Now, this incredible plant I bought, and some of you are going to just salivate with jealousy, at a flea market, a car boot sale, a trash and treasure, call it what you will, here in Melbourne. Now, I bought it from, it's actually called the Coburg Trash and Treasure, and it's in the north of Melbourne, and it's in the grounds of, I think it's Melbourne's last drive-in cinema. Remember those from the glory days of the late 70s and 80s? Anyway, every Sunday there is a trash and treasure in the area, and there are always a couple of really interesting plant growers, very amateur, a lot of things in ice cream containers and garden soil, but a lot of really unusual succulents, some great begonias I found over the time, and every now and then amazing orchids. And in fact, my first Sarcochilus hartmanii, which is the star of many of my videos, it's now massive, I'll link it up here, I bought that from the Coburg Trash and Treasure. So there you go. If you're ever in Melbourne and got nothing to do on a Sunday morning, gold coin donation, go and have a look and see what you find. Now, I have never seen Oncidiums there before, but this particular week, well, it was a while ago now, there was a seller who had a lot of fabulous orchids, and you never know who's going to be there. Luck of the draw. Anyway, let's step back in time, because I did shoot a bit of footage when I bought it just to show you what the plant looked like in full bloom, because it is amazing. Let's go. Well, plant lovers, here it is in bloom. Just look at the size of that thing. My goodness. And there is a second spike there. And at the moment it's early January. It's in perfect bloom. One whole spike is out. The other's about to come out. So I'm going to get a couple of months out of this. I bought it about 3 weeks ago, just before Christmas, at a flea market. Can you believe it? For $45, which is a reasonable amount of money. But look at the size of it. And I have never seen such a large flowering specimen of an Oncidium group orchid here in Melbourne. I just haven't. It's incredible. I can't believe my luck in finding it. And I must say, it's looking a little bit healthier since it's been in my care. So the lady I bought it from kept it outside under trees, which is great because it means it can certainly take my conditions, and it's going to be an outside all year orchid for me, which is wonderful. So that will be bright indirect light. You can see there's lots of sort of leaf detritus in the mix, which, just having a look at it, looks like a medium orchid mix. The grower I bought it from certainly knew orchids and knew what she was doing. You can see when I bought it, actually, it was much yellower. So I think it was getting way too much light on the leaves. It's certainly darkened a little bit since I've had it, which is great. So obviously Oncidium types need bright indirect light, but not really strong light. It obviously will flower, but the leaves are going to just look a little chlorotic, I think. Amazing pseudobulbs. And what I've noticed since I've had it is we've got some new growths emerging, which is wonderful. And what I can see quite clearly is that the flowers have emerged from really quite substantially mature pseudobulbs. You can also see the seller has trimmed the tips of the leaves, which would suggest too that it got sun damage, maybe insect damage, because it's obviously quite outside and exposed to the elements. So it's in a very large pot. I'm obviously going to keep it thus while the flowers are doing their wonderful thing. I'll keep it like this throughout autumn and winter, and next spring, or at some point before it goes into flower, or in fact maybe even when these flowers have died down and these new growths are starting to create new roots, I will repot it. But I'm not going to really expose the root system. I'm literally going to try and lift it out of this pot and place it in a large terracotta pot, which I'm going to drill with some holes. That's the plan. But at the moment I'm just enjoying the blooms. Not fragrant, and it's one of those hybrid Oncidium types, and just a cursory glance makes me think that it could be Odontocidium Catatante Orange Kiss. Now there is a lot of orchids in that group of sort of mega hybrids with many, many species ancestors that all look kind of similar. But this isn't a bright orange. It's much more of a sort of a rusty color, which I think corresponds more to that name. So anyway, I mean, who knows? Actually, I kind of don't care. It is just the most spectacular plant, and I'm so lucky to have got it. Look at that. I mean, it's the biggest spike I've ever seen on an orchid in the flesh here in Melbourne. It's amazing. And look at that second spike just going for it. So I am watering it a lot. I haven't fertilized it yet, but I probably will give it a liquid fertilizer. Maybe today, actually. It is midsummer and it is as hot as hell today. Let me just tell you, the weather's going to break though, which is, it's great weather for orchids. Very humid, very warm. But yeah, I'm so excited. So this bit that I'm filming now is going to be part of the life cycle of this plant. So I will film potting it, and then hopefully we will include this footage when it's flowering next year, when it's in its new pot and I've managed to get it to thrive. Of course, it could die in between, which would be terrible, but hopefully it won't. I'm looking forward to this loving life for me, and I'm really excited by knowing how the grower grew it, because it's going to be so easy for me to look after it because it's quite a sizable plant. Anyway, plant lovers, let's see what's going to happen in a few months' time. Well, there you go. Isn't that amazing? Such a stunning, stunning plant. And the lady was growing it just outside under trees. So outside all year, not undercover, but getting Melbourne's winter nighttime minimums, which can get to, depends where she was, but where I am, it can on a particularly cold night get to 2 or 3 degrees centigrade, which is the high 30s Fahrenheit, low 40s. So we don't freeze here or get frosts in the inner city, but it's not always that cold on a winter's evening. That's sort of once or twice a year. So relatively mild winters, we're quite fortunate. Anyway, this one is growing outside, and a lot of amateur local growers do just grow their orchids outside, either under the eaves of their house or under the shade of trees. No other protection. So there you go. You kind of don't need, depends on your climate, of course, but here in Melbourne, you often don't need a lot of fancy equipment and carry on, which is my ethos, to grow spectacular plants. But what I did say was that I wanted to repot it. So came from an amateur grower, which I am as well, outside. Now, what I had noticed, a lot of the leaves had been cut. So what we can safely assume is that a lot of these leaves get sun damaged from the position where it was. And you can see on some of the older leaves still the black marks from sun damage or water damage, in fact, perhaps even in winter. Now the new growths are really starting to emerge, and they're quite large now. And as you can see, they're really beautifully lush and green with no sun damage. So I'm going to keep mine slightly shadier. Oncidiums do like bright indirect light, but this was getting direct sun, I think, at some parts of the day. So what I want to do is really just lift it out, get a sense of the medium in it and the roots, and maybe then just plonk it straight in a pot without too much root disturbance, because it's a massive plant. I'm almost going to treat it like a cymbidium, in fact. Now, the pots that I've got, depends what happens when I take it out. I've got this wonderful pierced orchid pot, and then I have this large old terracotta pot here. So it just depends what we find. Now, generally, Oncidiums don't have very deep roots because they're species ancestors or epiphytes. So, you know, roots that creep along mossy knolls and collections of detritus on trees and in the nooks of branches. So not very deep rooted plants. However, over the centuries, in fact, there have been so many complex hybrids that some have very rigorous root systems, some don't, some are real creepers, some want to climb, all manner of things going on. This, however, is very much your standard Oncidium with chunky bulbs and a compacted habit. So quite easy for pot cultivation. Okay, so the next thing I'm just going to do though is, you can see the spent flower spikes. So those amazing spikes that we saw earlier in the year. It was very hot that day, I must say, very hot, hence the Al McPherson singlet. There we go, let's just trim those off. Like tree branches, look at those. I've never seen such a vigorous Oncidium for sale and in bloom here in Melbourne. The ones that you tend to find are sort of much smaller and very decorative. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to leave most of these leaves as they are, even the damaged ones. So let's just have a look. Now, generally, best time of year to repot kind of anything is going to be spring, when new growth is emerging and roots are starting to put on their action. However, a lot of complex Oncidium hybrids do tend to grow throughout the year because they've been hybridized to produce flowers multiple times throughout the year. So you can get 2 or 3 blooms a year, and those blooms are tied to the maturity of a new bulb because it's the new bulbs that flower. So those kind of traditional species cycles where they'll have a very sort of dryish winter and then put on the new growth in spring and blah, 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 isn't quite the same for hybrids. And as we mentioned this, I've got no idea what it is, but quite sure it has a complex background. All right, let me spin the camera around. Let's unearth this and see what we're going to do. Okay, plant lovers, let's just see what is going on inside this pot. I am as curious as you are. Woo! Goodness me. Well, what I can see is that this medium has completely broken down, if it ever was anything other than compost potting mix. So that's quite dense actually. I must say though, as we saw with the plant, hasn't really done it much harm. Now what we can see though is that most of these roots, well, a lot of them are dead, but some are still active. So actually, I'm just going to clean out, which wasn't going to be my intention, but I'm going to clean out a lot of this soil. Oh, look, we can see the remnants of bark, but a lot of that has really broken down. The other thing we're going to see is that, as we predicted, the root system is quite shallow. So I am going to go for the shallower pot. And you know what? There's lots of active roots in here, so I am not going to get too crazy with this. Yeah, there's lots of roots doing their thing. So, well, plant lovers, here is the joy of unpotting. So that is actually really dense, basically garden soil and potting mix. So I am just going to go out into the garden and hose it off and try and get a lot of that material out. It's very, very compacted. I just think it might be a better thing for the plant to try and get a lot of that out and replace it with a much lighter mix. So I'm going to go and do that and come back. Okay, mission accomplished. I took it outside and gave it a good spray with just the gentle jet of the hose. And there we go. So as we predicted, a much shorter sort of root ball. Now I will spin the camera around and just show you what we have observed. So there you can see. So what is kind of left in there now is just larger bark pieces. I'm not going to go too crazy with this. There's a lot of active roots growing within this ball, and a lot are dead, obviously. But from the dead roots, there are new roots springing out at different joints. So this is such a vigorous plant. I'm not really going to do any root trimming actually, but what I am going to do is put it in a shallower pot, and I can see there are roots growing from these new growths through the surface of the material. So it's in a very healthy condition root wise. Kind of surprising, isn't it, given that material? Just goes to show though how tough a lot of orchids can be. So let's move our newly washed friend over here and let me show you what I'm potting it in. Now this is a really basic Oncidium mix for me. So it's medium bark, a little bit of charcoal, a little bit of perlite, and a little bit of sphagnum, and more bark than anything else generally. So we've got this nice, loose, free draining, chunky, gorgeous mix, which hopefully the roots will much prefer. So that's that. And then this is the pot I'm going to use. As you can see, lots of aeration holes. And this is made for orchids. Oh, I've just noticed it's got hanging wire holes, which could be very useful. So that is going to fit perfectly. So what I'm going to do first is just filling the base with a nice layer of that material. Now I sort of want to create a bit of a dome in the middle to take that hollow section of the root ball. So the roots are going to sit over that. Let's just see where we're up to. Okay, that might need to be a little lower. Now, as the orchid is in growth, those new roots are emerging, I am going to put a little bit of fertilizer in, even though it is autumn and kind of not what I would normally be doing, but this is a very busy little plant. Okay, so next up is just to feed this mixture down the sides there. Now I'm also just going to poke some material in these holes, particularly sphagnum moss. There we go. This is somewhat unorthodox, plant lovers. Interesting. It was actually great to be able to stuff medium into that root ball through the holes at the side. So what an unexpected gift this pot is. I am going to actually thread it with wire and suspend it. I think that might be a lot easier to give it plenty of air movement and plenty of light. So there we are. That's our repotting of my amazing flea market Oncidium. Let's hope I haven't killed it. And I hopefully will look forward to seeing this in bloom whenever it decides to. Plenty of new growth, so I'd imagine come spring when they've matured, we might get a whole new batch of flowers. So I will keep you updated with that. Anyway, plant lovers, in the meantime, I hope wherever you are, all's well in the world. If you want to know what I'm doing next week, you might have to hit subscribe because I post every week on a Friday. You can follow my daring adventures. If you so desire, it might help you, or you might think, I am never doing that. The great thing about growing orchids is that it is very specific to wherever you are, whatever your climatic conditions are, whatever your growing availability space is. All of those things will determine how and why and when and where and what you grow and how you repot and in what. Anyway, but yes, I hope all is well in your world, and this Oncidium and I bid you farewell, and I look forward very much to seeing you next week.